My name is Bethany Burns. I am 31 years old, and if anyone had told me back in Millbrook, Pennsylvania, that I would one day own a hotel empire, I would have laughed so hard my sides would have hurt. Small town, sleepy streets, and the occasional runaway cow, that was my childhood. My older brother Garrett was the golden child, everything I wasn't, and I was the one everyone overlooked. The girl who tried hard, failed quietly, and learned the hard way that family love can be as conditional as the weather in Pennsylvania. I left when I was 18, dragging one suitcase and $200, fueled by stubbornness and a promise I made to myself. I would never be underestimated again. I started at the bottom, cleaning rooms in a boutique hotel, learning every secret about the business that nobody thought I could handle. I watched, I studied, I worked my way up. Front desk, assistant manager, manager. By 28, I owned my first property. By 30, I ran Birch Hospitality with 6 boutique hotels under my name, and the jewel of all of them. The Monarch Hotel, the very place where tonight a whisper would cost someone everything. Walking into the ballroom, I heard it before I even saw her. Sloan Whitmore, my brother's perfect fiancée, leaning toward her bridesmaids, glass in hand. Oh great, the stinky country girl is here. Her friends tittered like hyenas, their designer dresses swaying with each giggle. She didn't even glance at me. I was a shadow, a wrinkle in her perfect picture, perfectly insignificant. What Sloan didn't know, what nobody knew, was that the Monarch Hotel, every glittering chandelier, every piece of silverware, every inch of marble she strutted across belonged to me. And by the end of this evening, that whisper would cost her everything she thought she deserved. I wore jeans, boots, and a simple silk blouse. My hair smelled faintly of Millbrook, a small homage to where I came from. People like Sloan needed flashy logos and loud brands to prove their worth. I needed nothing of the sort. Real power doesn't scream. It sits quietly in the corner, watching while the arrogant fumble with their illusions. I spotted my mother across the room, holding court as usual, bragging about Garrett and Sloan. Garrett, standing next to Sloan, looked like he'd won the lottery, unaware that he was holding a losing ticket. Sloan finally noticed me, not with recognition but irritation, the subtle twist of a nose at something so beneath her. I smiled back at her, patient, quiet, and calculating. The best revenge, I had learned, is silent. It watches, it waits, and it strikes with precision. I found a quiet corner, a drink in hand, watching everything unfold. Wesley Crane, my general manager, gave a subtle nod from across the room. My staff knew exactly what to do. Everything was running smoothly. Everything was ready. And in about 3 hours, Sloan Whitmore would learn that the girl she called Stinky actually owned the ground she was standing on. Tonight wasn't just an engagement party. It was a stage. A stage where secrets would be exposed, illusions shattered, and reality brutally delivered. Franklin and Delilah Whitmore, the so-called respectable parents, floated around, their confidence slightly brittle under the strain of maintaining appearances. Sloan, with her fake smile, calculated gestures, and polished charm, was oblivious to the storm about to hit her. I had received an invitation last minute. A guilt invitation from my mother, Patricia Burns, who probably wanted to appear like the entire family was present. She didn't see me. Nobody did. That was exactly the advantage I needed. For years, everyone assumed I was struggling, poor little Bethany, living paycheck to paycheck. What they didn't know was that I was funding the life they thought Garrett was responsible for. Every mortgage payment, every medical bill, every utility, paid quietly by me, the invisible daughter who nobody acknowledged. Tonight, all of that would finally surface, and the look on their faces when it did. Priceless, Bethany Burns, that name had always sounded ordinary in the mouths of people who never saw me as anything more than the small-town girl who couldn't measure up. But tonight, that name carried weight, power, authority, and it was about to redefine everything in that ballroom. I observed Sloan from across the room. Every laugh, every tilt of her head, every practiced gesture was manufactured. She wasn't here for love, she was here to secure an image, a connection, a way to survive a web of lies she had spun over years. I could see it in her eyes, the same hunger I had seen in predators back when I started my hotel career, people who thought wealth was a cloak, not a responsibility. I made my way to the restroom, partly to collect my thoughts, partly to make my next move in privacy. That's when I overheard Franklin Whitmore in the hallway, phone pressed to his ear, tone clipped and tense. "We need this wedding to happen," he said, voice low but urgent. "The Burns family has money to cover our situation. We just need to get through the ceremony." He paused, listening to whoever was on the line, then muttered, "After tonight, everything will be fine." He hung up and walked back, the salesman's mask slipping back into place, but I had already heard enough. The Whitmores were desperate enough to con a family they believed was wealthy, except my family wasn't wealthy, not in the way they imagined. All those payments to keep my parents' house afloat, all the bills I had quietly covered for years, they thought it was Garrett's doing. They had no idea. And by the time they discovered the truth, the walls they had built around their lies would collapse, leaving them exposed and unprotected. I located Wesley near the service entrance, clipboard in hand, observing every staff member with a practiced eye. "Everything ready?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. He nodded, masking the anticipation in his expression. I handed him a USB drive and outlined my plan. During Franklin's toast at exactly 9 p.m., I wanted every piece of evidence projected across the screens: documents, court filings, financial records, photographs, everything that could strip the Whitmores of their false facade. He didn't question me. That was why I trusted him. Wesley always understood that when I took action, it was precise and final. He disappeared toward the control room, ready to execute the plan. I returned to the party, blending in unnoticed. Sloane approached me shortly after, her smile false, her voice coated in sweetness. "We should chat," she said, guiding me toward a quieter corner. Out of earshot, her demeanor changed. She leaned in, whispering accusations and judgments. She claimed she knew about my monthly payments, insinuated they were attempts to buy my family's love, called me pathetic. She said Garrett had confided in her about my supposed jealousy, my perceived inadequacy. She warned me to stay away, claimed nobody would miss me. I let her talk, letting every word cement the justification for what was about to unfold. She thought she understood the situation. She didn't. She had no idea who I truly was or the depth of the resources I controlled. Wesley appeared beside me, handing over a folder. Inside were damning documents on the Whitmores, evidence of fraud, Ponzi schemes, legal investigations. My suspicions were confirmed. They had built a house of cards, and tonight it would collapse. Their scheme spanned multiple states, multiple aliases. Sloane, or Sandra as she was truly named, had been operating under different identities for over a decade. I called my lawyer, Rebecca Thornton, and a forensic accountant, Naomi Delaney. Within the hour, all findings were confirmed. The Whitmores were under federal investigation. Sandra Williams, aka Sloane, had been living a lie, and tonight the truth would come to light. I positioned myself near the back of the ballroom, watching, waiting. Guests mingled, oblivious to the storm about to hit. Franklin Whitmore straightened his tie, preparing to toast, unaware of the chaos queued to unfold. My phone buzzed, a text from Garrett. He mentioned his unease, the strange behavior of the Whitmores. I didn't respond. He would see the truth soon enough. 8:59 p.m. Franklin stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand. The room hushed, glasses raised. He spoke of family, legacy, love, words that were hollow and fragile. I signaled Wesley with a single word, "Now." The screens flickered and the first slides appeared, court filings from Arizona, names and faces revealing the web of lies, financial statements proving fraud. Gasps swept through the crowd. Sloane froze. Garrett's eyes widened in disbelief. Franklin's mask of composure crumbled. Documents flashed, investor records, photographs of Sandra under different aliases, news clippings of failed schemes. The illusion shattered. Sloane screamed, calling me a jealous nobody. I smiled. "Interesting," I said. "I wonder how you explain the federal investigation waiting outside this hotel." As if on cue, Agent Carla Reeves and her team entered, badges displayed, arrest warrants in hand. Franklin tried to flee but was intercepted. Delilah clung to him, panic evident. I stepped forward, microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, "meet the real Whitmores, fraudsters, con artists, liars. And Sloane, or should I say Sandra Williams, has been living a life built on deceit." The room watched, stunned, as the truth unraveled in real time. Security escorted the Whitmores out. Sloane screamed, kicking against the inevitable, her perfect life crumbling in minutes. Garrett approached me silent, shocked, finally seeing the sister he had ignored for so long in a new light. I handed him our grandmother's necklace, the inheritance wrongfully given away. The weight of it in my hand felt right, complete. The crowd, once judgmental and oblivious, now looked on with awe and disbelief. The stinky country girl had owned the room, and she had done it with patience, intelligence, and precision. The aftermath of the engagement party was surreal. The Monarch Hotel, my flagship, had become the stage for justice, and for the first time in years I felt truly seen, not as the small-town girl who had never measured up, but as someone powerful, competent, and unstoppable. I wandered through the empty ballroom, the echoes of shocked gasps and muttered exclamations still lingering in the air. The floral arrangements were slightly wilted, the ice sculptures melting, champagne fountains still trickling. It was all insignificant now. What mattered was that the Whitmores, the architects of so many lies, had finally been exposed. Garrett stayed behind, silent, watching the police take the last of the Whitmores into custody. His expression was a mixture of awe and guilt, like someone who had just realized he had been living in a bubble. He turned to me, his eyes red-rimmed, and whispered, "Bethany, how did you know?" I smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. "I watched, I listened, I learned," I said. "Everything that mattered, I observed. People underestimate what they cannot see." Patricia, my mother, appeared slowly, her posture uncertain. The confidence and sharpness she carried into the room earlier had evaporated. She approached cautiously as though the very air had changed around her. Her voice trembled. "Bethany, I didn't know," she said. Tears welled up in her eyes. She was smaller somehow, diminished not by the night's events, but by the realization that she had misjudged me for decades. I handed her the phone with the bank statements and receipts, the evidence of the payments I had made all these years to keep our household afloat. "I did it," I said, "not for thanks, not for recognition, but because it was necessary. And because they are still our family, no matter how blind they have been to me." Patricia's tears fell freely now, unrestrained, and for the first time I felt that bridge between us could be rebuilt brick by brick with honesty and understanding. Garrett finally stepped forward. He took the necklace from me, our grandmother's piece, the one that had been wrongfully gifted to Sloane, and held it carefully, reverently. "This was always meant for you," he said softly. I didn't know." I let him hold it for a moment, feeling the weight of years of resentment and misunderstanding lift ever so slightly. The guests who remained started to murmur among themselves. Some were in disbelief, others impressed. A few even approached me, congratulating me discreetly, curious how the small-town girl had orchestrated the evening with such precision. I smiled politely, letting the attention wash over me without indulging it. This wasn't about fame. It was about justice, clarity, and the restoration of truth. Over the next few days, the story went viral locally. "Hotel mogul exposes con artists at family engagement party," read the headlines. One even cheekily referred to me as the stinky country girl who owned the room. I framed that article and hung it in my office. Every time I looked at it, I was reminded of how far I had come, not just in wealth or position, but in confidence and purpose. Business resumed as usual at the Monarch Hotel, but the atmosphere had shifted. Staff moved with a quiet pride, knowing they worked for someone who not only managed hotels but also navigated life's challenges with keen intellect and unwavering courage. Garrett visited the hotel regularly now, finally seeing the world I had built from nothing. He walked through the lobby, eyes wide, tracing the details of the space I had meticulously curated. "I always thought I knew you," he admitted. "I was wrong about everything." We began to rebuild our relationship slowly but sincerely. Lunches turned into conversations. Conversations turned into shared memories and acknowledgments of past hurts. We laughed, we cried, we argued occasionally, but each interaction was genuine, something I had never had with him before. My mother, Patricia, began therapy to understand her behavior, her favoritism, and the impact it had on our family. Her calls were hesitant at first, uncertain, but she was trying. That alone was progress. I didn't push for immediate reconciliation. Real change required patience and consistency. In the office of the Monarch Hotel, surrounded by the view of the city skyline, I felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. Not because of the money, not because of the prestige, but because I had proven to myself, and to those who doubted me, that I was capable of incredible things. That small-town girl who left Millbrook with only $200 and a stubborn refusal to fail had become someone unstoppable. A few weeks later, during a breakfast event for investors and scholarship recipients, I introduced Nicole Patterson, the newest Birch Hospitality Scholarship recipient. She was nervous, overwhelmed by the elegance of the environment, but I recognized the same determination in her eyes that I had carried all those years. I told her, "Remember, the people who build the most beautiful things often start with nothing but dreams and stubbornness. Never let anyone make you feel small for where you came from." She smiled, hope shining through her nervousness. As the day continued and guests came and went, I stood in the lobby, watching the world pass under my ownership. Business travelers, families, tourists, all of them walking on floors I owned, sleeping in rooms I had built. Yet it wasn't about showing off. It was about proving to myself that the life I envisioned was real, tangible, and lasting. The stinky country girl, once dismissed, underestimated, and overlooked, had risen. And she would continue to rise, quietly, powerfully, and with purpose. The morning after the engagement party felt almost surreal. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the Monarch Hotel, glinting off the polished marble floors and reflecting in the crystal chandeliers. Guests had long gone, but the memory of last night's events lingered in the air, like the faint scent of champagne and roses. I walked through the lobby, boots clicking softly against the floor, a quiet sense of satisfaction settling in my chest. Garrett was already in the office, pacing slowly, eyes darting to every corner as if expecting something else to explode into chaos. "Bethany," he began, voice unsteady, "I still can't believe it." "I never realized, I thought I knew, but I didn't understand." He trailed off, struggling to find the words. I gave him a small, encouraging smile. "It's okay," I said. "You were focused on other things. I'm not blaming you anymore. What matters is now." He nodded, but the guilt was evident. I could see it in the way he rubbed his hands together and avoided direct eye contact. I wish I had known you were the one supporting the family all this time. I would have, his voice cracked and he stopped, swallowing hard. I let the silence stretch, letting him feel the weight of the past without me needing to speak more than necessary. The day rolled on with its usual demands, calls, emails, staff meetings, but there was a different energy now. Wesley had everything running smoothly as always, but there was an added spring in his step, a subtle pride in the way he greeted me. The staff knew something had shifted. No longer was I just the boss in title. The events of the night had solidified my authority, my intellect, and my capability. By mid-morning, my phone buzzed. It was Naomi Delaney, the forensic accountant who had helped me uncover the Whitmore's secrets. "Bethany," she said, excitement in her voice, "I just got confirmation from the federal office. The indictments are official. Sandra Williams, Franklin, Delilah, every one of them is facing multiple charges. Your evidence was instrumental." I smiled, a genuine, quiet smile. "Thank you, Naomi. I couldn't have done it without your help, truly." Later, I met with Rebecca Thornton, my lawyer. She had already been in touch with Agent Carla Reeves and the team. "Everything is proceeding as planned," Rebecca assured me. "They're compiling reports and preparing the court filings. The Whitmores won't be able to manipulate this situation in any way." I felt a wave of relief. Months, maybe years of careful observation, planning, and execution had finally come to fruition. Justice had been served, not loudly, not through confrontation, but through preparation, knowledge, and timing. Garrett approached me again, this time with a different demeanor. He seemed calmer, more grounded. "Bethany," he said, "I want to learn from you. I don't want to be blind to things like this again. Will you teach me?" I tilted my head, considering. "If you're willing to listen, really listen, then yes. But it won't be easy. It will require honesty and humility, qualities that are sometimes uncomfortable but necessary." He nodded, the promise in his eyes unmistakable. "I'm ready," he said. And in that moment, I realized that our relationship, strained, ignored, and fractured for so long, was starting a new chapter. Not a perfect one, but one built on truth, acknowledgement, and mutual respect. By the afternoon, I was preparing for another event at the Monarch, an industry networking session with investors and partners. I stood at the entrance, watching as guests trickled in. Among them, I noticed young women like Nicole Patterson, nervous but determined, ready to learn, to rise, to make something of themselves. I made a mental note to speak to each of them personally, to ensure they understood that success isn't about where you start, but the persistence, intelligence, and courage you carry with you. As the evening approached, Garrett stayed by my side, observing my interactions with the guests, asking questions, taking notes mentally, and slowly starting to understand the depth of what it meant to build something from nothing. I caught his eye and smiled. "You're learning," I said quietly. "Yes," he replied, "and I'm proud of you, Bethany, more than I ever realized I could be." The Monarch Hotel, once just a building I had painstakingly climbed to own, had become more than that. It was a symbol of perseverance, vision, and justice. I had turned a small-town upbringing filled with underestimation and scorn into an empire, a legacy, and a lesson in patience and strategy. That night, as I stood alone for a moment in the hotel's grand ballroom, the lights dimmed for cleaning crews, I let myself reflect. The city outside was bustling, indifferent, but inside I had created a world that was real, tangible, and mine. I had risen from the whispers of stinky country girl to someone who commanded respect, orchestrated justice, and inspired others. And in that quiet moment, I understood something fundamental. Life doesn't reward those who wait for validation. It rewards those who act, who see, who plan, and who never let anyone else define their worth. I had finally proven it, not just to my family, not just to the Whitmores, but to myself. The next morning, the Monarch Hotel buzzed with a renewed energy. Staff moved with precision and confidence, their steps lighter, their expressions sharper. Something had shifted in the air, a subtle acknowledgement that their leader had not only survived a storm, but had commanded it to her favor. I walked through the hallways, observing the small details that mattered, the polished brass handles, the neatly arranged room keys, the scent of fresh linen in every corridor. It was the kind of perfection that could only be achieved when someone genuinely cared about every corner of their empire. Garrett had arrived early, eager to begin understanding the mechanics of hotel management. He trailed behind me, notebook in hand, asking questions I would normally have found tedious, but today I welcomed. "Bethany, how do you decide which vendors to trust? How do you keep everything running so smoothly?" His curiosity was sincere, unlike the superficial interest he had once displayed in our childhood games of comparison. I smiled, thinking about how far he had come in just a day. "It's not about trust alone," I explained. "It's about observing patterns, understanding motives, and recognizing competence. Every choice you make sets a chain reaction into motion. You must always be aware of the ripple effect." I could see the gears turning in his head as he absorbed the lesson. For the first time, Garrett was learning not just from my success, but from my strategy, my thought process, my calculated patience. By midday, I had a meeting scheduled with Nicole Patterson, the young scholarship recipient. I wanted to ensure she understood what it meant to rise from obscurity to influence. She walked into my office, nerves evident in the way she clutched her folder to her chest. I gestured to a chair, keeping my tone warm yet firm. "Nicole, I want to hear your story," I said. She hesitated, then began recounting her journey, long hours at 2 part-time jobs, managing to keep her grades up, and dreaming of a future she was determined to build. As she spoke, I could see the same fire that had driven me for years reflected in her eyes. I leaned forward, letting her feel my attention. The world often underestimates people who come from small towns, humble beginnings, or difficult circumstances, I told her. But success isn't about where you start, it's about vision, tenacity, and the willingness to act when opportunities present themselves. You already have those qualities. The rest is about learning, adapting, and taking risks strategically. Her eyes widened, absorbing every word. I knew she would remember this moment for the rest of her life. The afternoon brought a meeting with investors interested in expanding Birch Hospitality's reach to the West Coast. Garrett stayed close, silent but attentive, watching as I navigated negotiations with confidence and grace. Each conversation was a balance of persuasion, data, and subtle reassurance. I noticed Garrett scribbling notes, but also watching how I projected authority without arrogance. Later, Naomi Delaney called with updates on the Whitmore's federal case. "Bethany," she said, "the investigation is progressing faster than anticipated. Evidence you provided has sealed their indictments. They're looking at serious prison time, and Sandra Williams will not be able to manipulate the system as she has in the past. It's over." I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. Justice had been meticulously delivered. No grandstanding, no public spectacle, just calculated, undeniable truth. As evening approached, I made my way to the hotel's rooftop terrace overlooking the city skyline. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet. Garrett joined me, still carrying the notebook. "I've learned so much today," he admitted. "Not just about hotels or business, but about life. I see now why you never let anyone define your worth. I'm proud of you, Bethany, truly proud." I studied his face, noting the sincerity that had been absent for so long. "Thank you," I said quietly. "And I'm proud of you too for finally seeing the value in observation, patience, and strategy. Remember, Garrett, real power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, precise, and patient. That's what makes it unstoppable." We stood together for a moment, looking over the city that shimmered with possibility. It was more than a skyline. It was a symbol of ambition, of dreams transformed into reality, of struggles overcome and lessons learned. In that quiet pause, I realized that the Monarch Hotel had become more than a business. It was a testament to resilience, strategy, and unwavering self-belief. It was my legacy, and through it, I could inspire others like Nicole, Garrett, and countless others who would come after me. That night, I walked through the empty halls of the Monarch, the faint echo of my boots against the marble floor reminding me of the long road I had traveled. From a small-town girl underestimated and overlooked, I had become a woman who commanded respect, orchestrated justice, and inspired others. The world had whispered doubts, and I had listened, not to believe them, but to prepare. Every small step, every calculated move had led to this moment of quiet triumph. And as I stood alone in the grand ballroom, bathed in the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, I understood something vital. Life's greatest victories are often invisible to the crowd, carried silently by those who refuse to let anyone else define their worth. That night, the Monarch wasn't just a hotel. It was a declaration, a reminder, and a beacon of possibility for every underdog, every overlooked soul, and every quiet strategist ready to rise. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Monarch Hotel, casting golden streaks across the lobby marble. The scent of fresh flowers mingled with the faint aroma of roasted coffee from the hotel cafe. Everything gleamed, polished to perfection, not just in appearance but in the meticulous attention to detail that had become my signature. I walked through the lobby, observing the staff coordinating seamlessly, their movements precise and synchronized. It was as if the hotel itself had absorbed the confidence and discipline of its owner. Garrett was already in the conference room, waiting with his notebook open, pen poised. He looked more engaged than I had ever seen him during our childhood, and that alone gave me a sense of satisfaction. "Bethany," he said, standing as I entered, "I want to understand everything. Every decision, every strategy. How do you anticipate problems before they even appear?" I smiled, appreciating his eagerness. "Observation, patience, and persistence," I explained. You study patterns, identify weaknesses, and prepare contingency plans. You must always be proactive rather than reactive. And above all, you must understand human behavior. It's the most unpredictable yet consistent element in any enterprise. He nodded, scribbling furiously. I see now why you stayed quiet all those years. You were building power, knowledge, influence, and waiting for the right moment. I let that comment hang in the air, neither confirming nor denying, because in essence, he was correct. That was exactly what I had done. Later that morning, I met with Nicole Patterson in my office. She arrived dressed simply but with a quiet determination in her eyes. I gestured to the seat across from mine. "Nicole, tell me about your journey," I said. She hesitated briefly, then shared the hours she worked at 2 part-time jobs, the late nights studying, and her dreams of entering the hospitality field. Her voice trembled at times, but there was a fire in her tone that reminded me of my younger self. "You have all the qualities necessary to succeed," I told her. "It's not where you start, it's how you use every opportunity to build momentum. Keep your focus, stay humble, and never let anyone make you doubt your worth." She looked at me, her expression a mixture of gratitude and determination, and I knew she would remember this moment for the rest of her life. By afternoon, I had a series of meetings scheduled with investors looking to partner with Birch Hospitality for expansion to new cities. Garrett observed quietly, absorbing every tactic, every negotiation strategy. I maintained a delicate balance of confidence and approachability, ensuring that each investor felt valued while subtly guiding the discussion toward outcomes favorable to the company. I could see Garrett taking notes and realizing how much thought and foresight went into each decision. Meanwhile, Naomi Delaney called with updates on the Whitmore case. "Bethany, the investigation is moving faster than anticipated," she said, excitement barely contained in her voice. "The documents and evidence you provided have sealed the indictments. Sandra Williams, Franklin, and Delilah Whitmore will face the consequences they deserve. Federal authorities have enough to ensure they cannot manipulate the system or escape justice." I allowed a small, satisfied smile. Justice, delivered with precision, was far more powerful than any public spectacle. As evening approached, I stepped out onto the rooftop terrace to take in the skyline. The city glimmered under the sunset, each light a symbol of opportunity, resilience, and ambition. Garrett joined me silently, still holding his notebook. "I've learned so much today," he admitted. "Not just about running a business, but about patience, observation, and self-belief. I see now why you never let anyone else define your worth. I'm proud of you, Bethany, truly proud." I studied his face, recognizing a sincerity that had been absent for years. "And I'm proud of you," I said, "for finally seeing the value in careful observation, calculated risks, and patience. Real power doesn't shout, it moves quietly, strategically, and with purpose. That is what makes it unstoppable." We stood together, gazing at the city that stretched endlessly before us. It was more than a skyline, it represented dreams realized, obstacles overcome, and lessons learned. In that moment, I understood that the Monarch Hotel symbolized more than my success. It embodied resilience, strategy, and determination. It was a beacon for those who dared to dream, regardless of their beginnings. Later that night, walking through the hotel corridors, the quiet echo of my boots on marble reminded me of every challenge I had faced. From the underestimated country girl to the woman who had orchestrated justice and built a legacy, I had mastered the art of patience, strategy, and resilience. The Monarch Hotel was no longer just a business, it was a statement. Every detail, every decision, every achievement reflected the culmination of years of quiet determination. As I paused in the grand ballroom, bathed in the soft glow of chandeliers, I realized a profound truth. The greatest victories are often invisible to the crowd. They belong to those who persist quietly, who observe diligently, and who act decisively when the moment is right. Tonight, the Monarch wasn't just a hotel. It was a testament to the power of perseverance, intelligence, and unwavering self-belief. The following morning, the Monarch Hotel was already alive with activity. The lobby hummed with the quiet energy of early arrivals, staff coordinating flawlessly, and the subtle fragrance of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. I walked through the space, noting the small improvements my team had implemented overnight: tables rearranged for better flow, a new signage system for directions, and subtle ambient lighting that created a warm, inviting atmosphere. Every detail mattered, and every adjustment was a reflection of the attention to excellence I demanded. Garrett approached me in the lobby, holding a folder of notes. His expression was a mixture of curiosity and respect, a combination I had rarely seen directed at me when we were younger. "Bethany," he said, his voice low, "I need to understand how you manage all of this. Every decision seems intentional, every move calculated. How do you do it?" I smiled, appreciating his genuine interest. "It's about observation and strategy," I explained. You notice patterns in people and situations, anticipate obstacles before they appear, and always maintain a plan for contingencies. It's also about resilience, knowing when to wait, when to act, and when to let events unfold naturally. You learn quickly that people underestimate you when you stay quiet, but that silence can be your greatest advantage. He nodded, flipping through his notes as though trying to absorb every lesson in a single sitting. I think I understand now, he said softly. You built all of this without anyone noticing, without any acknowledgement, and yet your influence is everywhere. I never realized how much I've underestimated you, Bethany. I let the words hang in the air. There was no need for further explanation. He was starting to see, finally, the depth of my strategy and patience. Later that morning, I met with Nicole Patterson in my office. She was nervous, yet her eyes were bright with determination. Bethany, she said, her voice trembling slightly, I still can't believe I was selected for the scholarship. I've worked so hard, but it feels surreal. I gestured for her to sit. Nicole, success isn't just about luck, it's about persistence, resilience, and making choices that align with your goals. You've proven that you can manage multiple challenges, maintain focus, and rise above obstacles. That's why you're here, and that's why you'll succeed in the hospitality industry. Always remember, the people who doubt you are often the ones who will be astonished by your achievements. Her smile widened, and I could see the spark of confidence igniting within her. Thank you, she whispered. I won't let this opportunity go to waste. By early afternoon, I was back in the executive conference room, preparing for a meeting with potential investors interested in Birch Hospitality's expansion. Garrett followed closely, taking notes and observing my negotiation style. I laid out financial projections, strategic expansion plans, and operational improvements, all while maintaining a poised, approachable demeanor. Garrett watched as I handled objections with calm authority, turning potential concerns into opportunities for collaboration. Meanwhile, Naomi Delaney called with an update on the Whitmore case. Bethany, she said, excitement barely contained in her tone, the federal investigation is moving faster than expected. The evidence you provided has been pivotal. The indictments are solid, and Sandra Williams, along with Franklin and Delilah Whitmore, will face the consequences of their actions. They won't be able to manipulate the system or escape accountability. I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. Justice, executed efficiently, was more satisfying than any public confrontation. As evening approached, I stepped out onto the rooftop terrace, the city stretching endlessly beneath the setting sun. Garrett joined me silently, notebook in hand. I've learned more in a single day than I ever imagined, he admitted. Not just about business, but about patience, observation, and self-confidence. I finally understand why you remained quiet all those years. You were building an empire while the rest of us were distracted by appearances. I studied his expression, seeing a sincere recognition of the journey I had undertaken. And I'm proud of you, I said. For beginning to understand the value of strategic thinking, patience, and resilience. Power is quiet, deliberate, and precise. That's what makes it enduring. We stood together, watching the city lights flicker on, representing possibilities, resilience, and ambition. In that moment, the Monarch Hotel was more than a building. It was the embodiment of years of perseverance, intelligence, and careful planning. Each corner, each decision reflected a life built from nothing, a life forged in patience and determination. Later that night, as I walked through the marble corridors, the quiet echo of my boots reminded me of every obstacle I had overcome. From the underestimated country girl to the woman who had executed justice and built an empire, every step was a testament to resilience, strategy, and foresight. The Monarch Hotel was no longer just a business. It was a declaration that success belongs to those who persist, who plan, and who rise quietly while others remain oblivious. And as I paused beneath the grand chandelier in the ballroom, I reflected on a profound truth. The greatest victories are invisible to the crowd. They belong to those who observe diligently, who prepare meticulously, and who act decisively when the time is right. Tonight, the Monarch wasn't just a hotel. It was proof that quiet strength, strategic patience, and unwavering self-belief could transform even the most humble beginnings into lasting legacy. The morning sun filtered through the Monarch Hotel's expansive windows, casting long, golden streaks across the polished floors. I arrived early, as always, to oversee preparations for the week ahead. Staff were moving efficiently, yet the energy felt different today, lighter, more purposeful. The chaos of the Whitmore incident had settled, leaving a calm sense of triumph in the air. For the first time in years, I could walk through my hotel without sensing the weight of doubt from others. Garrett was waiting in the executive suite, holding a fresh cup of coffee. He had a notebook open, and the way he glanced at me was different, respectful, attentive, no trace of the dismissiveness that had marked our childhood. Bethany, he said, I've been thinking about everything that happened. I need to understand your approach to business, strategy, and people. I want to learn from you, not just be amazed by you. I chuckled softly, taking a sip of my own coffee. Garrett, the foundation of everything I've done is observation. You watch, you analyze, and you anticipate. Most people are too busy performing or complaining to notice what's really happening. That's where the advantage comes from: quiet diligence. You stay under the radar, and when the moment is right, you act decisively. He nodded, scribbling notes. I want to be better at noticing, at understanding the subtleties. And you will, I said. Patience and persistence are your allies. Don't rush, don't try to prove yourself to the wrong people. Focus on what matters, and the rest will fall into place. Later that morning, Nicole Patterson arrived at the Monarch for her first official day shadowing me. Her wide eyes roamed the lobby, fascinated by the elegance and precision of operations. I greeted her warmly, introducing her to department heads, showing her the subtle intricacies that kept the hotel running seamlessly. Nicole, I said, notice how every department works in harmony. The front desk, housekeeping, events, they all rely on communication and foresight. The key to running a successful operation is not just managing people, but inspiring them to anticipate needs before they arise. She nodded eagerly, absorbing every word. I've never seen anything like this, she admitted. It's overwhelming but incredible. I smiled. Overwhelming is part of growth. Remember, the people who appear to have it all together often started with nothing and learned through trial, error, and persistence. That's what you're witnessing here. By mid-afternoon, I was in the boardroom with potential investors for Birch Hospitality's new expansion project. Garrett observed silently, taking mental notes on my negotiation style. I presented the financials, demonstrating careful planning, calculated risk, and past performance. When questions arose about potential market fluctuations, I calmly addressed each one, turning concerns into opportunities for trust and partnership. I noticed Garrett's eyes widening slightly, a mix of admiration and comprehension. Meanwhile, Naomi Delaney called with an update on the Whitmore case. Bethany, she said, her voice brimming with excitement, the federal investigation has accelerated. Your documentation was crucial. Sandra Williams and her accomplices won't escape justice. The indictments are solid and their assets are frozen. They won't have a chance to manipulate or disappear. I allowed myself a quiet moment of satisfaction. It was a different kind of victory than the dramatic reveal at the engagement party. This one was methodical, complete, and final. As evening fell, Garrett and I stood on the rooftop terrace, overlooking the city skyline as the lights shimmered like scattered stars. He turned to me, a mix of awe and reflection in his expression. Bethany, I spent years thinking I knew you, that I understood your world. But today I see how meticulous, patient, and resilient you've been. I underestimated everything you built from nothing. And I'm proud of you for finally seeing it, I replied. True success doesn't always announce itself loudly. It is quiet, precise, and it grows while others are distracted. The key is recognizing it when it emerges, not letting ego or pride cloud your vision. We stood in silence, letting the city's hum speak for itself. In the lobby below, staff continued their careful orchestration, guests moved seamlessly through their routines, and the Monarch thrived as a testament to years of unwavering effort and vision. This wasn't just a hotel, it was a symbol of persistence, strategy, and the quiet power of resilience. That night, as I walked through the grand corridors of the Monarch, I reflected on the lessons learned from the past. From the underestimated country girl to the woman who had orchestrated justice, built an empire, and restored family bonds, every step of the journey had shaped who I was. The Monarch Hotel, in all its elegance, was proof that patience, intelligence, and determination could transform humble beginnings into enduring success. And as I paused beneath the ballroom's glittering chandelier, I understood fully. The most meaningful victories are often invisible to those around you. They belong to the quiet, the patient, and the prepared, the ones who act decisively when opportunity meets readiness. Tonight, as always, the Monarch stood as a monument to calculated ambition, steadfast resolve, and unwavering belief in oneself. The morning sun streamed through the Monarch Hotel's grand windows, illuminating every polished surface and casting long, golden reflections on the marble floors. Today was not just another day in my hotel, it was a culmination of years of strategy, patience, and resilience. I walked through the lobby, noticing the familiar rhythm of staff moving seamlessly, the subtle precision of operations humming like a well-tuned orchestra. Every detail reminded me of how far I had come from Millbrook, from the country girl who was once dismissed, underestimated, and overlooked. Garrett joined me in the executive suite, carrying his notebook like a student ready to learn. Bethany, he began, his tone careful, respectful, I've been reflecting on everything. I want to understand how you think, how you plan, how you see the world differently. Teach me, because I've wasted too many years misunderstanding you. I smiled softly. Garrett, the foundation is observation, watch, analyze, and anticipate. Most people are too busy performing, too busy proving themselves to notice the nuances. That's where advantage lies, quiet diligence. You wait, and when the moment is right, you act decisively. He nodded, scribbling notes furiously. I want to be better, not just impressed, but able to understand the patterns you see. And you will, I reassured him. Patience, persistence, and awareness, those are your allies. Stop trying to impress the wrong people and focus on the right ones. The results follow naturally. Later, I escorted Nicole Patterson through the Monarch Hotel, showing her the behind-the-scenes operations. Her eyes widened as she absorbed the elegance and efficiency. Notice how every department works in harmony, I instructed. From housekeeping to front desk, from events to catering, every function depends on foresight and communication. The magic is not in control, but in anticipating needs before anyone even asks. She nodded eagerly. I've never seen anything like this. It's overwhelming but inspiring. Overwhelmed is part of growth, I told her. Most people never reach this level because they give up when things feel too big or impossible. But the people who build empires start with nothing, just persistence, strategy, and vision. By mid-afternoon, I was in the boardroom presenting Birch Hospitality's expansion plan to investors. Garrett observed quietly, noticing the intricacies of my negotiation style, how I navigated objections, turned doubts into confidence, and projected competence without arrogance. Questions arose about potential risks, market fluctuations, and competitor strategies. I addressed each calmly, providing data, foresight, and reassurance, demonstrating that careful planning outweighed blind optimism. Garrett's expression shifted, admission, respect, and realization blending into one. Meanwhile, Naomi Delaney called with an update on the Whitmore investigation. Bethany, she said, excitement in her voice, your documentation and strategy accelerated the case. Sandra Williams and her accomplices are firmly in federal custody, assets frozen, indictments solid. The chaos at the engagement party was just the beginning. Justice is being executed methodically. I allowed a brief smile. This wasn't the theatrical victory of the party, it was the professional, precise triumph that secured everything. Long-term, unshakable. As evening fell, Garrett and I stood on the rooftop terrace looking over the city's glowing skyline. Bethany, he said quietly, I thought I knew you. But today I see your intelligence, patience, and strength. I underestimated everything you've built from nothing. And I'm proud that you finally see it, I replied. Real success doesn't shout, it grows quietly, patiently, and emerges when others are too distracted to notice. Recognizing it when it appears is the true test. We lingered in silence, the city humming below. Staff orchestrated operations flawlessly, guests moved smoothly through their routines, and the Monarch thrived, a testament to years of unwavering effort and precision. This hotel was more than a building. It was proof that patience, intelligence, and quiet determination could turn humble beginnings into enduring success. Walking through the grand corridors later, I reflected on the journey, from the underestimated country girl to the woman who had orchestrated justice, built an empire, and restored family bonds. Every step, every moment of quiet observation and strategic action had shaped this reality. Standing under the ballroom's crystal chandeliers, I realized the truth. The most profound victories are often unseen by others. They belong to the prepared, the patient, the decisive, the ones who act when opportunity meets readiness. Tonight, as always, the Monarch stood as a monument to ambition, perseverance, and belief in oneself.